And joining me now is our political analyst, Lori Turnbull, to talk more about that, reflecting. There's probably a lot going on, Lori. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Probably a lot of reflecting going on as we hear more and more MPs, Liberal MPs, turning on the Prime Minister.
For sure. I mean, this has been a long process where, every so often it seems there's somebody else who will put their name on it. At first, those in caucus who were pushing back on his leadership, it was kind of secretive. They weren't necessarily going up to the mic and saying it. But now, I think as it gets closer to the return of Parliament and as the runway to the next election gets shorter, perhaps the mindset is, if he's going to go, we've only got a finite amount of time to kind of put the pressure on him to do that. And so I think as they get into election readiness mode as well, right? Like as the party has to move toward making sure all their candidates are nominated, things like that. This last push to see whether there's any budging Trudeau for those who want him to go. We're seeing that happen now.
But what can they do? I mean, he must be hearing these voices. Is there anything else they can actually do to try and get him to go?
Well, this is it. I mean, it seems that there's quite a lot of concern in the caucus about whether he's going to go into the next election. Again, we've heard this a lot over the past number of months. There isn't the mechanism in the Liberal Party that there is in the Conservative Party. So they availed themselves of the Reform Act. And in that, using that mechanism, they ousted Erin O'Toole a few years ago and then had a leadership process that brought Pierre Poilievre in. But the Liberals didn't take advantage of that mechanism where the caucus can, with a 50% plus one vote, push the leader out and then replace with an interim leader. And so their options for actually kind of pushing him out the door are pretty limited. And so you see it happening kind of by 1,000 cuts instead, including the resignation from cabinet and the departure of Chrystia Freeland, which was a huge blow to Trudeau. In terms of what they can do, they can keep putting pressure on him. They can, to have these conversations in front of the media. They can have them in back rooms. I think, honestly, now that you can hear a bit more in terms of rumors of people putting together a leadership bid, or people are networking, people are putting some money together, that sort of thing, that might be the type of thing that puts a greater amount of pressure on him, because without there being somewhere else to go, it's hard, I think, for the party, and again, in the absence of this formal mechanism, it's hard to push one leader out when you're not sure who the next leader is going to be. It's hard to make that transfer. We might see more drastic measures, but you can imagine such things as the MPs kind of stop voting in favor of the government in Parliament. But frankly, how would they do that when there are no votes on legislation going through Parliament now? Like, I think, honestly, because Parliament is in the state that it's in, because this motion of privilege has taken over in that space and we don't see regular business happening in Parliament, because the opposition parties are now saying, we're all ready to defeat this government, because there's a movement afoot to do that in the Public Accounts Committee. I think, honestly, the runway for the Liberal caucus members might be up anyway, apart from making these pushes as they are now.
And are there any indicators which way Trudeau might be going?
I don't know. I mean, it seems that he's taking the time to reflect over Christmas, that sort of thing. I think his options are basically, does he want to go into the next election with the party as leader of the party or not? And if he does, he's going to have to get to election quickly, given the fact that opposition parties are saying they're done with this. Or if he decides he wants to give the reins to somebody else, it would be probably by way of proroguing the Parliament so that the Liberals could have this process without being at risk of losing government in the House of Commons. And then once that happened, that an election would be shortly after that, I would think.
Okay. Lori, thank you as always for your insight.
Thank you too. Take care.
Lori Turnbull is our political analyst.